And good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Captain Lou Extravaganza Live here on the 12-Ounce Sports platform and networks and Zingo TV channel 761. Yours truly in the chair, back and better than ever. Captain Lou here with you tonight, and we have got a great show planned for you tonight. We're going to talk a lot of NHL hockey, Stanley Cup playoffs. I think they're going to start Saturday with at least one series. Boston and Washington are going to start off on Saturday night, so we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. But we have got a lot to talk about in the world of NHL, and we're going to be joined by one of our old friends, one of our original NHL insiders, Tyler Marcotte, is going to join us at about 8:30 Eastern Time, and we're going to go through all the playoff scenarios, the different setups as far as who's going to play whom, and then we'll get a pick for the Stanley Cup Championship, and who knows, the Hart Trophy. We'll talk a lot about what's going on in the world of the new hires, or I should say, who has already been let go, and with the coaching carousel in the NHL. John Tortorella and the Columbus Blue Jackets have parted ways. Of course, they finished tied for last, and Detroit won the tiebreaker for the last spot in the National Leagues, or the Central Division of the NHL. So Columbus technically finished last, so John Tortorella and the Blue Jackets have parted ways, and Rick Tocchet, of course, let go at Arizona. And I don't even know if it's really his fault with Arizona. I mean, it's who knows, man. That franchise, they've made the playoffs a couple of times, but ever since they've gotten there from Winnipeg, what has it been, 24, 25 years ago, they really just have not been able to get their footing. And so, maybe this will be another new direction. And, of course, the $1 million question here in the Detroit area is Jeff Blashill going to be back with the Red Wings? What does Steve Yzerman have up his sleeve? That's going to be the most talked about topic in Red Wing land until we get a firm answer. It sounded like we might get one this week, or even yesterday on Monday, but as of right now, we have not gotten one. So we're going to talk a lot of NHL Hart Trophy. Is it McDavid's? Is it Austin Matthews? Is it Vasilevsky from Tampa? Who knows? But we're going to talk to Tyler Marcotte about that starting at the bottom of the first hour. Then coming up right towards the end of the show at 9:40, we're going to talk with Todd Korter, an old friend of the show. We haven't been on since the NFL draft took place the end of April, and we'll run through that tonight, and we'll go over with him. He's based out of Atlanta, so we'll talk about what they're thinking of Kyle Pitts, and we'll talk a little Major League Baseball with him as well. So we invite you to stick around for that. We're going to talk Aaron Rodgers. We can't go without talking about Aaron Rodgers, of course, the bombshell that was thrown down draft night, or right before the draft, with by Adam Schefter, who some now think maybe it was kind of shady, that he really didn't have anything to go on. It was all hearsay. Well, I've got my own thoughts on that, and I will go over those as well here tonight. But is Aaron Rodgers, are his days numbered in Green Bay? We're going to talk about that. I'll give you my opinion on that. We'll go through the draft, talk a little Tim Tebow. I've got my conspiracy theory on it. I don't know if it's much of a conspiracy theory, but I've got my theory on it as well. So, he's signed a one-year deal. Doesn't mean he's going to make the opening day roster, but I think that's pretty much a guarantee. And I'll tell you why a little bit later on here in this opening half hour. So, again, lots to talk about tonight. Want to, again, thank everybody for taking the time out to join us here on this May 11th, 2021. And if you've got any questions or anything you want to drop on Twitter, my Twitter handle is @TheRealCaptainLou. Or you can follow me on Facebook at Lewis Gamblin, Instagram, same thing. And I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Captain Lou Sports, and also take a look at my website, which is CaptainLou.net. We've got a lot of our old shows that are archived there, as well as the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Lots going on in the network. We've got some great things in store coming up this year. Can't say it enough to invite you all to take a look and check out our website, 12OunceSportsNetwork.com. You can see the list of all the shows we've got. The Burn with Mitch, I'll tell you, it takes a lot now. He has stepped up his game. He had, Denny McLean on last week, Bob Harrigan today. I'd tell you, he has stepped up his game. So I'm going to strap on the trunks. I got to lace up the boots, man. Mitch, the Burn with Mitch, the first half of our double dip here on Tuesday nights. And it's, I got to really, I can't say enough about Mitch with leading off here on Tuesday nights. Great guest as always. Great conversation with the Burn with Mitch before me. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is one of the greatest minds in hockey here on the network. Philly Pete, if you want to make some money, I invite you to check his show out, 12 to 12:30, 3 times a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Those are just some of them. The World Hockey Report with Cody Janner. He's got it going on, and we've got a lot going on in this summer. We're going to have live baseball, just you name it. We got Talking Miners. Rando was on last night. Just some of the shows we've got here on the network. So lots going on. It's going to be a great summer. Really looking forward to it. And I'll have some more wrestling shows with my tag team partner, Matt Gamlin. We've got WrestleMania Backlash coming up this weekend. We're going to talk more at length about that in the coming shows. So stick around here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network, 12OunceSportsNetwork.com. Also, don't forget, we're live on our platform of networks, which is Zingo TV, channel 761. Also with our YouTube network channel, also on Twitter Live, as I mentioned, and Facebook Live. So getting that out of the way, again, hockey coming up at the bottom of the hour. Stanley Cup we are ready to rock and roll with the Stanley Cup playoffs. Just a few games left. I know the North Division in the Canadian division, if you will, the Scotia division, they've still got plenty of games left. All the playoff teams are set. And we'll go over with this with Tyler. But again, a rundown. Montreal clinched the last spot last night with that overtime loss to Edmonton. They've got 58 points. They can breathe a sigh of relief. They've got 2 games left. They still have an opportunity to bump up to third and flip-flop with Winnipeg, where they would play Edmonton in the first round and not Toronto. So Toronto wins the North Division. They get that home ice advantage in the opening round. The only divisional spot that is open as far as the top spot is the West. Vegas and Colorado. I thought Vegas pretty much had it a shoe-in. They're sitting good. They've got 1 game left. They've got 80 points. Colorado has 2 games left with 78. So they're jockeying for that top spot. Keep in mind that also what's at stake there is the President's Cup and the home ice advantage throughout the playoffs. Right now, Carolina has 80. So I think Vegas has the tiebreaker, if I'm not mistaken. So if Colorado can overtake Vegas, they would get the top spot. So it's going to come right down to the end. We'll talk about, too, later on, our kind of our surprises, both good and bad, in the National Hockey League as well. How about that? There goes my football already. Boom! The leaders in the Discover Central Division, of course, Carolina, my big surprise. I thought Tampa Bay had that division locked up this year. They ended up finishing third behind Florida. In the Mass Mutual Eastern Conference, Pittsburgh, another surprise on top. I wasn't really so sure about that. I thought Boston was going to be the division winner there. But those seeds are already set. Pittsburgh is going to take on the Islanders in the opening round of the playoffs. Boston is going to take on the Capitals, and that's going to start on Saturday. Now, it's crazy as some of the playoffs aren't going to start until the 19th, possibly the 20th, the Canadian division, but they'll get them going here in May. It's great to talk about the NHL playoffs. And also, speaking of the NBA, we're going to talk about the play-in tournament a little bit, and LeBron squawking about it. You know, I can't let it go without talking about him. We'll talk about that after our first break. But right now, again, talking NHL, the North Division locked up, as we mentioned. Toronto will take on either Montreal or Winnipeg. Edmonton's got the second spot locked up, so they'll have home ice for at least the first round of the playoffs. Now, the question is, are there going to be fans in the stands? I think it's all going to go just depending on where your location is. You know, what state is it going to be? Canada, I'm not sure what the capacity is for the playoffs, and so, but still, it's going to be better than the bubble. That's all I got to say. So really excited for the opening round of the playoffs. We talked about the West. Vegas, again, in Colorado, they're still jockeying for first and second. Minnesota's got the third spot. St. Louis, I don't want to say they limped in, but they've got the fourth spot. Whoever they play, it's going to be a Herculean task. But, that's the great thing about the Stanley Cup playoffs is you don't know. I mean, there's always upsets. And Toronto, we all know their history with the opening round of the playoffs. They've lost some big series against Boston. And so they're always going to keep that in the back of their head. Are they going to be able to get the monkey off their back and win an opening round series? Pittsburgh and the Islanders, man, that's going to be a knockdown drag out. Boston and Washington. Those are some great, great opening round matchups. Florida and Tampa. Florida upstart team playing really well. Joe Quenneville's got them playing great. Nashville, they come in, but it's a new season. Is Carolina going to be up to the task? Great matchups again. We'll talk to we will talk to Tyler Marcotte about that at the bottom of the opening hour. Or here at 8:30 Eastern time. So we invite you to stick around for that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to switch gears, talk a little football, maybe a little basketball with the play-in tournament. Talk some Aaron Rodgers as well. We got a lot to go over tonight. Stick around. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Platform and Networks. Zingo TV Channel 761, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Here live again with the Captain Lou Extravaganza.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money, and we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Platform and Networks and Zingo TV Channel 761. Yours truly, Captain Lou, here in the chair until 10 o'clock Eastern time tonight. And don't forget, you can catch a recorded version of this on our YouTube channel and, of course, on my website, which is captainlou.net, and also on 12-Ounce Sports, or on Zingo TV, rather, Channel 761. Again, Tyler Marcotte coming up at the bottom of the hour, 8:30, talking NHL, Stanley Cup playoffs. everything that's going on in the world of NHL. The end of the regular season coming up very shortly with the conclusion of all the divisions. Of course, they're staggered because of the COVID situation in Vancouver and whatnot. So they've still got a handful of games left, playing right through till the middle of next week. So the Canadian playoffs may not start really until about the 20th. So all the games are locked up, or all the teams are locked up, as we mentioned. So we'll go through all that with Tyler here coming up in about 13 minutes. And then, of course, at 9:40 tonight, old friend of the show, Todd Corder, will stop on by, and we'll talk NFL with him. Kyle Pitts getting the 4th pick of the draft with Atlanta. He's down in the Atlanta area. We'll see how giddy they are, and we'll talk Major League Baseball with him. Baseball right now, a lot of teams middling and a lot of teams can't hit. And we're going to talk about that with Todd here coming up at 9:40, so we invite you to stick around for that. We talked at the top of the show. We said we couldn't go without Aaron Rodgers talk, and, well, the last time we were live on Tuesday night was right before the draft. We previewed the draft, and again, want to thank everybody for joining us on that show. Bill Leckus from SiriusXM, Aaron Crouch from the Vegas Squares podcast for joining. A great show, by the way. No surprise at the top of the draft. It was, Trevor Lawrence and then Zach Wilson going to the Jaguars and the Jets, respectively. And then Trey Lance going to the 49ers. Not a real surprise. We thought it might be Mac Jones. He had the best odds. And it was crazy because Mac Jones ended up not going to the 49ers. He ended up going all the way down to 15 to the the New England Patriots. That's who they wanted. It's so crazy how Bill Belichick just, he didn't have to trade up for him. He got who he wanted. Kyle Pitts at number 4, great pick by Atlanta. Love the pick. I think he's going to be huge. I was hoping he would fall to my Detroit Lions at number 7. The Lions got Penei Sewell. I absolutely love that pick as well. I thought he was going to go to Cincinnati. But Joe Burrow lobbied. He got Jamar Chase. He's got his wide receiver. He's got his weapon. Hopefully he's got blocking to keep him upright. That's my only concern with Cincinnati. And then at 6, Miami, I thought they would go after Sewell, but they went after Waddle. So now Tua's got another weapon. These guys, these quarterbacks have their friends back from college. Let's hope it can convey a couple of wins or so for each guy, so for each team. Then 8, Carolina, they didn't go after. It went down to number 11. I like the Patrick Surtain pick at 9 by the Denver Broncos. But again, it started to open up the floodgates. We'll talk about that in a second. Talked about the pick at 11. I thought Chicago really got healthy, trading up to get Fields from Ohio State. As a Lion fan, I'm a little bummed out about that because that's going to make the Bears better. But here's my question with the Chicago Bears. They got Justin Fields at 11. Matt Nagy is on the hot seat. He's kind of like Detroit was last year. They've got to win now. There's no getting around that. They have to win now. My question is, can they afford to bring Justin Fields along slowly? Let's say, for example, if the Red Rifle or Nick Foles comes out of the gate and Chicago is 2-3, 2-4, whatever. Will that, and they get Justin Fields in, and he ends up bringing them to 7-9, no playoffs. Did Nagy and his brain trust, did they buy an extra year by drafting Justin Fields? That's my question in Chicago. They're in a win-now mentality. They've got the defense, although they kind of underachieved last year a little bit. But now they got the quarterback. They've got a few weapons. Their lineup doesn't scare me all that much. I know they got Allen Robinson, but I'm not totally afraid of that lineup. So, but what may benefit them is what we're going to talk about next. And of course, that's Aaron Rodgers. We all know the situation that, according to Adam Schefter, which is now debatable with some people, people are calling him to the carpet saying that he made it up. Well, when he came on Dan Patrick, he kind of came clean and said that it was a culmination of things that he heard, but it wasn't anything that was brand new on draft day. He thought he would just bring it out. Well, there's no secret that Aaron Rodgers isn't happy. And my thing with it, Aaron Rodgers hasn't really done anything to cool the flames or stop the story or whatever. He's still bringing it up loud and clear with his actions. Has he met in Green Bay? Has he met with Gutenhurst? Has he met with Matt Murphy, the president? Everybody's saying that, the odds and everything are saying that he's probably going to head to Denver. Denver would be the best fit, without question. Denver didn't draft a quarterback at 9. Now, you're hearing the rumors circulating. They tried to do a draft day trade. San Francisco tried to do a night before the draft trade to get Aaron Rodgers. Has Aaron Rodgers worn his welcome out in Green Bay? I don't know. I know people that live in Green Bay. I know a lot of Packer fans. I know they don't want him to leave. Us as Lions fans and Vikings fans and Bears fans, we'll help pay for his ticket out. We'll help with the moving expenses. It's just ironic that we talked about this before on the show. If you look back at the Packer greats, nobody has lasted more than 16 seasons in Green Bay. And what a coincidence. Bart Starr, 16 years. Brett Favre, 16 years. And now it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, 16 years. Now, we all know nothing's going to happen at least until June 1st because the salary cap, the hit will be cut in half basically for the Packers. Aaron Rodgers, there's no secret he wants out west. He wants to go out west. How much is his fiancée going to play into it? I just think the bridge is worn. Nothing would surprise me with Aaron Rodgers. He might be leveraging this into more money. Maybe Green Bay is going to just offer him that $45 million extension or whatever. Drafting Jordan Love didn't help. That's for sure. They gambled. They whiffed. They thought that maybe Aaron Rodgers was on the decline. He put that proverbial chip on his shoulder and had an MVP type year. But we also know Aaron Rodgers. He's a diva. He's a whiner. Listen to some of his old radio shows. Watch some of his interviews. And we've got a couple of guys from the network here that think that Aaron Rodgers is no different than Tom Brady. There's a little difference between Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the amount of rings. That's the difference right there. Tom Brady has won the big games. He's been to the dance. He's won it 7 times. Aaron Rodgers had an opportunity last year. He didn't make the plays. Why did they go for the field goal? I don't know. But, the play calling was suspect. I get it. But last year wasn't the only year. And just the culture in Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers acts like he's a fish out of water. He doesn't quite fit in. But believe me, he's good for throwing people under the bus. He's a great talent. No doubt about it. First ballot Hall of Famer. I get it. But I think Green Bay, they've kind of worn a little bit, I don't know. His act is worn out, I think. I don't know if the damage is already beyond repair. Who knows? Maybe it's a smokescreen. Maybe he comes back. Maybe he realizes that the only place he can go is to Denver or the Giants. He would, that's the other rumor. He would never fit in at New York. Mr. Tough Guy Joe Judge, Aaron Rodgers wouldn't like that lifestyle. He likes to be coddled. Everything's got, and it's not going to be that way with Joe Judge. He'll have some talent there. They've got draft picks. I don't see him going to the Giants. Now, Denver makes the most sense. I think you could see Sertan going, coming to Green Bay. Maybe Drew Lock, but we'll talk more about that. But right now, let's go to our guest line, and let's go to the Ken Ryan Voya Financial Advisor guest line, and let's put the football away. Let's get the hockey puck out, and let's talk to our old friend, our NHL insider, Tyler Marcotte. Tyler, how are you, my friend? How you been?
I'm great, Lou. How are you? Long time no talk.
I know it's been too long, but hey, it's a great time to have you on because it is Stanley Cup playoff time right around the corner. I know you're fired up for it.
Oh my gosh, very. It's nice to have a season go with relatively very little COVID issues. I know the Canucks dealt with quite a bit for their season, but in the grand scheme of things, they were able to have a good. The league was able to have a good season, and now it's playoff time.
Oh, it is indeed. And we got lots to talk about with the playoffs. That it's a different format. Before we get into the playoffs, give me your impressions. What did you think of the format this year? The teams just playing their own teams. And do you think they'll stick with this divisional format, or do you think they'll go back to a little more normalcy next year, the old divisions?
Yeah, I hope they go back to normal. It was nice to get some more solidified rivals. You see teams like the Penguins play the Capitals, a lot throughout the season, and you see, the Canadian rivals. I think that's who people really enjoyed watching was the Canadian teams play each other a lot more often. You had a little bit more Toronto, Montreal. You had a little bit more of the West Coast Canadian teams playing the East Coast Canadian teams. But, I think I found myself at the time looking at the schedule going, God, the Penguins are playing the Flyers again. Like it felt like it was a lie. And I'm the kind of guy who likes to see how my team stacks up against the best of the whole league. I would have really liked to see Pittsburgh play Toronto, who had a great regular season, or even Vegas, or even Colorado. I mean, those are great matchups. So I felt myself kind of wanting to not see the same old Penguins versus Flyers, even though it was kind of nice to get that rivalry. It kind of stoked the fire for a lot of these teams.
Oh, it sure did, and it was a nice 1 year thing, I think. And I'm with you. I look forward to Detroit playing teams like Vegas and going and playing Montreal and playing Toronto and getting out to play some of the West Coast teams that we don't get to see very often. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. Well, let's dive into the divisions and get the matchups. We'll go right. Let's start with the division out west. They still have something to play for out there. It's the only division that's not really wrapped up. Let's just assume that the playoffs do end. You've got Vegas and Colorado, though, jockeying for that first spot, the President's Trophy and everything. It's kind of, Tyler, when you and I talked at the beginning of the year, it's kind of what we thought it would be. Colorado is right there as one of the top teams in the league. Vegas, not disappointing. The team that really kind of, though, surprised me in a good way a little bit was Minnesota. I didn't think they'd play this well. They looked really good this year.
Yeah, definitely. They've looked awesome. One of my coworkers is a Minnesotian, and he is some wild faithfulness. So I've had a little bit of a steady pulse on what they're going on, but Krill, I'm not even going to pretend to pronounce his last name. I think it's Kaprizov. He's had a phenomenal season. A guy who, kind of came out of nowhere, not exactly a young guy, but he's kind of stepped into a role and has played really well there. I think they've really benefited from the addition of guys like Nick Bonino stepping up in that lineup. And they've also benefited from the leadership of Zach Parise and Brian Sutter, who are guys who have been there, have experienced disappointment at that state for a really long time. But it's awesome to see states with great hockey culture like Minnesota have a good hockey team. Minnesota deserves success. They deserve a team that's going to be good, and hopefully they can make a little bit of the run. Unfortunately, they're behind two really good teams, and they've got another former Stanley Cup champion sitting right below them. in St. Louis.
Oh, I know. That's we were talking about that at the top. You can't count St. Louis out. You know, they embrace that underdog role. I don't think they're going to do it this year, but gosh, Vegas, you know, they keep right on rolling. Marc-Andre Fleury, what can you say about him? A goalie near and dear to your heart. We all know that, but he's lived up to it, Tyler. He's played amazing this year. It truly has been, and he's got some good talent around him, but he stepped up when he had to.
Well, you know I love Marc-Andre Fleury. I think that he is a absolute no-brainer Hall of Famer, first
Correct.
ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you know, with the stats that he's put up, but think about from a longevity perspective. You know, his whole career is a come from behind story, because there are so many times in his careers where people looked at him and said, "You're not good enough anymore." You know, whether it was, you know, after the 2009 Stanley Cup and Pittsburgh, maybe from 2010 to probably about 2015, everyone was kind of looking at Marc-Andre Fleury like, are you really going to be the guy here? And he was key in getting those Penguins back-to-back Stanley Cups. You know, they would not have gone to those championships without him. And then, you know, as a casualty in the expansion cap, he goes over to Vegas, plays pretty well in his first season, but it seemed like, to me, from my perspective, like they were always trying to find his replacement.
Yeah.
They bring in Robin Lehner, you know, and they have some guys. I think Malcolm Subban was on that team for a while, and you have some guys in there. It's kind of like hey, in case Flower isn't able to play out his potential, we got guys in the back end, and he's always kind of pushed them aside. And I love to see him succeed. I'm very, very happy that he has been as good as he has been this year. You know, I think he could very easily be a Vezina contender. And you know, but you look at the guys on the team, Vegas is stacked, and they're all playing really well, and that's not a surprise. And you look at you know, Colorado's playing well too, but Mark Stone, I mean, what can you say about him? He's just been such a great addition for them. But the guys that you're seeing that they're playing well with, you know, Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty, Jonathan Marchessault, those are guys who are free agent and trade acquisitions. Those weren't guys that they got in the expansion draft. You know, so it's good that they're able to analyze their success and then say, what can we do to get over the hump? And then those guys are key contributors to their success.
You know, Tyler, if it weren't for the season that Connor McDavid was having or is having, you could say Mark Stone could be right there for a Hart Trophy. I know he's probably going to be a finalist, but wow. I mean, we'll talk about that in a minute, but Mark Stone, you hit the nail on the head with him, having a hell of a year. What is it going to take, though, for Colorado to overtake Vegas in that division in the Stanley Cup playoffs?
I mean, gosh, Colorado, I mean, talk about a team that's got a lot of really good players. I mean, Nathan MacKinnon, who is my current favorite player to watch in the NHL. I just love the way that he plays. You know, they're gonna need their best players playing their best. And right now, you look at their stats, and it's MacKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog, Makar, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the points category. That's great. They need to keep that up. I think it's a really tough task. They are going to need some help from their goaltending. I like Philip Grubauer. I like him a lot. But, you know, he needs to play. He needs to outplay Marc-Andre Fleury. You know, for me, I love the Minnesota story. I love the St. Louis hockey team, but I think it comes down to Colorado and Vegas. And right now, Vegas is playing really, really well. It's hard to not give them the edge. They've got the depth. They've got team speed, I think, is a big aspect that they thrive on. And they're a very well coached team. And so right now, Vegas has a little bit of an edge up for me.
I have to agree with you on that. You know, they're the top right now. And, you know, you named it. You know, it starts with Marc-Andre Fleury playing well and the offensive weapons. I'm going to go with Vegas coming out of the Western Division into the Final Four. The Central Division is, if you'd have told me at the beginning of the year that the Hurricanes were going to win, I would have said no. I would have went with Tampa. And, you know, the two teams that to me are the biggest surprise are Carolina and Florida. Quenneville's got Florida playing really well.
Yeah. I mean, a great coach who's been there, who's done
Mm-hmm.
that. A team, you talk about a team that has underachieved for so
Oh
long.
boy.
The Florida Panthers are the definition of a team that has underachieved, and Jonathan Huberdeau, you look at Mark Stone's having a great year. Jonathan Huberdeau has also had an incredible year. Alexander Barkov, those two guys, they never get the credit that they deserved in Florida. Jonathan Huberdeau and Alexander Barkov are
Mm-hmm.
two guys that, when you look at the least appreciated names in hockey, those are most people's top two lists. Alexander Barkov, I think, gets a little bit more of the disrespect. I think that he's a top 15, top 20 forward in this league, and no one talks about him in that aspect. He's led that team for so long, but I think you look at the team up and down the lineup. You've got a great goaltender. Sergei Bobrovsky's having a good year. Even the secondary goaltender Chris Dreiger, who I don't know much about, still don't, to be honest. But they're getting great depth from their forward lines, which I always questioned. And one thing that I love to see, I just want to take a quick minute. Anthony Duclair, he's had a really tough career. He's bounced around the league. He's went, Columbus to Phoenix to, I believe he was in Montreal, to the Jets. He is having some great success in Joel Quenneville's system. He's in their top 5, top 6 in scoring, and he's having a great year. So I'm really, really happy to see him playing well. And they're having vets like Patrick Hornquist and Keith Yandel, Aaron Ekblad. All those guys are contributing in a major way. So it's great to see them play well. Now you got to do it in the playoffs.
Well, that's right. And of course they've got the Stanley Cup champions. They're going to play them in the opening round.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that going 7 games easy.
Yeah, I could too. I mean, they beat them last night, and I think they've beaten them in the season series.
Mm-hmm.
They've held their own against them. Listen, I mean, I think that it's nice to talk about these teams though that have had a good regular season, but I'm always going to favor playoff experience and guys who have been there and done that. And what team has been there and done that more than Tampa Bay and has had more playoff experience in the last couple of years than them? They've been through the worst, and they've been to the mountain. So, I think that they're also a team that, maybe they're not playing at their best right now, but they're kind of a sleeping giant right now. I wouldn't write off Tampa Bay too quickly. If teams are thinking that they're not as good as they've been in years past, they've got the players to do it.
Well, I don't know if you knew. Did you see last night? A little side note with Tampa. They had the first African American line out last night.
Oh, yeah.
And did you know that I wish I could remember his name. One of them played in the ACHA.
I love it.
With Lindenwood, D1. I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head. I saw that this afternoon, and I forgot to write it down. So yeah, that was a great night last night for them. But Carolina, obviously I'd like to see them do well. I like Rod Brindamore, Peter Mrazek. Would love to see him get a ring. Your point is so well taken about playoff success, and I know that they've had a little bit of it, but I don't know. Until Tampa gets beat, I'm going with Tampa in the Central Division.
Yeah, I actually going into this season really liked Carolina. I am a huge Sebastian Aho fan.
Mm-hmm.
I also do love Rod Brindamore and the way that he coaches. Peter Mrazek has kind of turned it around a little bit, but he's not their number one.
No.
So they haven't had to rely on him, which I think is an environment that he thrives in.
He did that in Detroit.
Yeah, and when you had Jimmy Howard, everyone was like, oh, Peter Mrazek is incredible. Well, all the pressure's not on him. Wait till the pressure's on him, and he folds like
what a great point.
Like a wet blanket. But they've got a great 1-2-3 back, 1-2-3 goalie system. I love their defensive depth. I love it. They have a lot of great players on that back end. Dougie Hamilton is phenomenal. Jacob Slavin is a really good player too. Jake Bean and Brady Shaky, I think is how you pronounce his name. I never know how to do it, but they've got a great system. They play hard. They forecheck hard. They're speedy. They kind of remind me a lot of how the Islanders play, where it's a predication on the defense, but they're a lot faster and they're more aggressive in the offensive zone, I think. And they just play a really tough brand of hockey. I like their style. I like their leadership. And I think that they could definitely make another run here, kind of like they did 2 or 3 years ago.
What kind of? I know Nashville's in. Just I don't want to say by default, but that's a team I didn't see making the playoffs.
No, neither did I. I've always had questions about their forward depth.
Yes.
Recently, I've had questions about their defensive depth, their goaltending depth. Saros, I'm fine with him. I'm not a huge fan of him, but Pekka Rinne has been playing a lot this year, if I'm not mistaken, and their forward depth has always made me a little uneasy. So I'm not super. I'm not one who's going to believe that they're going to make a big push for Carolina. I think that if you have a team that is going to be physical, especially in your own zone where, hey, you're going to have to break out very specifically. You're going to need skilled guys who can get open and make some passes. That's a tough brand of hockey to beat based off of like a system. So I think for me, Carolina is the easy choice out of that.
Oh yeah,
first round game.
Sure.
And then I think that Carolina can hang with either one of the two Florida teams.
I think it's going to come down to, in my opinion, it's going to. I'm going with Tampa and I'm going with Carolina, and I think it's going to come down to goaltending. And Vasilevsky's having another phenomenal year, and he tends, he does well. But over the years, he's also kind of, for lack of a better term, had a couple of brain farts, and it's cost them. And so, but I just, that to me is going to ultimately come down to, in that matchup, your point about the defense of Carolina is well taken. I think that they can neutralize some of the weapons on Tampa, but I love the goaltending at Tampa right now. That's why I've got them edging Carolina and going to the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, I think to have it, we talked from one angle, a team like, Peter Mrazek, he's not a guy who likes to be leaned on. Vasilevsky loves. I mean, he's played in 42 games this year out of 56.
Yeah,
that's a lot of hockey.
It is
42 games in a 82 games. The way you see the league trending, it's a lot of these teams have 2 goalies.
Yes,
so that you're not overworking. Tampa Bay is like, he's fine. 42 games in a shortened season is incredible. 42 games in a regular season is incredible. Yeah. He's doing great. I think the thing that Tampa that always scares me is the depth.
Okay.
They have a lot of great depth. Point, Palat, Hedman, Gord, Stamkos, Killorn, Coleman, Sergachev, Cirelli, Tyler Johnson. Those are all guys with 20 plus points this season. So if one guy is not producing 90% of the time, if you've got great offensive depth, you've got a guy who can fill in the slot. So they're a team that's really, really scary. They've got a ton of, talk about veteran leadership. You've got guys like Luke Shen, who've been in the league forever. Ryan McDonough still on that team. Pat Maroon, Stanley Cup champion down in Tampa with both Tampa and St. Louis. You've got veteran leadership up and down the gauntlet. They're a really, really scary team to play against, which is why I don't think that people who are, I heard someone talk about Tampa Bay as kind of like, they're not as scary as they were in their Stanley Cup year. I disagree. I think they're equally as. I just think that the division has caught up to them in terms of the talent. Florida is playing a lot better, and Carolina is playing. They're not normally in the same division, but Carolina is always having a great year. So I think that it's a real toss up between the Hurricanes and the Lightning. And you know what? I think you've convinced me, Lou. I think I will take Tampa Bay, even though I do really like that Hurricanes roster.
Oh, it's going to be a fun series. Hopefully, I hope they both advance because, again, I want to watch some great hockey, and I think that's going to be a great series. We're joined by Tyler Marcotte, our NHL insider, here talking Stanley Cup and NHL on the 12-Ounce Sports Network and, of course, the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Let's go up east, if you will, your division. I like to call it your division because your Pittsburgh Penguins were victorious.
Mm.
And you know, I didn't think they'd win the division. In the beginning of the year, you and I talked about them just being happy to make the playoffs. They got
Mhm.
the number 1 seed. They got a tough, I mean, any draw is tough in that division. We've always talked about how tough it
Mm.
is. But they got Barry Trotz and the Islanders in the opening round. It's going to be a great, great matchup along with Boston and Washington. Man, oh man, they're going to beat the crap out of each other before they, you know, both matchups before they meet into the second round, they're going to be wore out.
Yeah, attention. Anyone who's betting on the playoffs, stay as far away from the East
Oh, I am.
as physically possible. I
100%
mean,
agree.
you first of all, the fact that I think anyone who's questioning Sidney Crosby and his greatness needs to look at this season in a microscope and say, I will never ever hear any other conversation from anyone as to why he is not a top 5 player all time. You know, Evgeny Malkin out for little under half of the season, injuries up and down the lineup, a team that has been turned over like a pancake in a pan so much over the last couple of years, and he is still playing at an MVP level at his age after all he's been through health wise. He has led that team single-handedly to the division title. So Sidney Crosby, you know, Connor McDavid had a great season. Austin Matthews had a tremendous season. You know, we talked about the guys who we also thought could have been in that conversation earlier. Sidney Crosby absolutely needs to be at the top of that list as well. He's had a great year from a Hart Trophy worthy participation. But I think that it's a tough matchup for them. The Islanders, for me, when I always consider a difficult matchup for the Penguins is physical. A team that's going to come in, that's going to physically beat you down. That's not going to be better than you, but that's going to physically beat you down. And that's the Islanders the last 5 years with Barry Trotz. He plays that brand of, you know, we may not have the fastest, the most skilled, the strongest team, but we're going to skate harder than you. We're going to play the best defensive hockey. And they've somehow figured out a formula to have the best goaltender every year. And I'm not really sure how. They've had some great goaltending over the last 5 years on the island. And, you know, it's a really scary matchup. It's really, really, really scary for a Penguins fan to see them going to the island. You know, for me, I think the Penguins have to win two of the first home games. If they can kind of establish their dominance and keep playing the hockey they've been playing lately, where guys like Brian Rust is having an awesome year. Every year he's playing better and better, and I love to see that. Jeff Carter has played better since coming over from the Kings in a trade that I absolutely love. And you're getting guys like Tanev back. I think he started skating yesterday, and Malkin started skating a couple days ago. I think he played in a couple games. You're getting healthier heading into the playoffs, and I love that. So I'll still take the Penguins. I'll take them in 7 just because it's a really difficult matchup. But good luck with Washington, Boston. I mean, holy crap.
Wow.
What a matchup. Two teams that if you said, who are your number 1 and number 2 favorites to win the cup out of the quote unquote Eastern Conference every year, it's those two teams. And they're going to have to beat the crap out of each other in that first round. And man, it's a tough matchup for both of those teams.
Oh, 100% agree. You know, and it's going to be a physical matchup. It's going to be an intimidating matchup. It's just up and down, like you mentioned. I think it's 7 games. I don't know. I honestly don't know in that one. Momentum, I think, is huge in that. If somebody, like if Washington's got home ice and they win the first 2 and they sneak one out in Boston. But even when you say that, Tyler, you know, they're so close that maybe home ice doesn't mean that much in this opening round series.
Yeah, when a team like this, or when teams like this are so evenly matched up, I try and look beyond the rosters, because you look at the teams on paper. I mean, look at Boston.
Yeah.
Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak, Krejci, Taylor Hall. I mean, they're loaded up front. Absolutely loaded. On the back end, very, very good. And you've got guys like Tuukka Rask, who is playing dynamite. Okay, let's go over to Washington. Okay, you've got Alexander Ovechkin. You've got Nicholas Backstrom. You've got John Carlson, TJ Oshie, Evgeny Kuznetsov.
Wow.
You know, it flip a coin, and whatever side it's going to land on, you're going to find a good hockey player.
Yeah.
So for me, I try and look at, is there an angle at each team where I think that they have an advantage, whether that's emotional, whether that's from a different perspective. I actually really like Washington in this series. I don't know if that's a gut thing for me. I don't think that they have the better goaltending, obviously, but I think that the way this team has rallied around TJ Oshie recently after the passing of his dad has been incredible. They've played really, really great hockey recently. I would also like to say that, the way that they've rallied to support Tom Wilson, you can have your opinion on whether, what kind of player he is. I have an opinion. I think my opinion matches up with 90% of the rest of the hockey world, but they've rallied around him. And I don't think that can be overmatched. And say what you will, he's a key contributor for them offensively.
He
33
is.
points in
Yes.
46 games. You can talk about him as a hockey player all you want. And, maybe we can get into that a little bit. I don't know what your thoughts on him are, but he's a key component to that locker room. And I think to see the rest of the league attack him and them kind of back him up, I think that locker room seems very, very, very tight right now. And so that's not a team that I would want to face right now. I'm going to give them the edge in 7.
Well, I'll tell you, my thing on Tom Wilson is he is so much like Bill Laimbeer was back in the late 80s. He was, some of these things he does are dirty. I'm not going to disagree with that. But how, it's hockey, and some of it is uncalled for. I get it. But what you said is they rallied around him. And, everybody would love to have him on their team. I was listening to Barry Melrose about a week ago, and he said the same thing. He said, he was speaking about himself. He said, I have to get used to the new brand of hockey, and some of the things he does just aren't meant to be in the new brand of hockey. But he's a weapon. He can, an offensive weapon, and that's what I like about him. What I like about Washington, Tyler, is I think that they can do enough to get under Boston's skin to goad them into doing stupid stuff, and that's where I think that Washington's going to have the edge. And I think Wilson, just him being on the ice, anytime he checks somebody, they're gonna pay too much attention to him and not enough to the other guys. And your point about Oshie, they're rallying around him too in a different way. I just love how that team is playing right now, and they get past Boston, they play Pittsburgh. It's going to be a tough out for the Penguins. As much as I know you love the Penguins, and I hate to say this, but I think Washington comes out of that division, and it's going to be a 6 or 7 game series against Pittsburgh in the conference or the division final.
Yeah, I like Washington too. That hurts me to say as well, but yeah, I agree 100%. My opinion of Tom Wilson is, do I like the way he plays? Absolutely not. Would I like a guy like him on my team? In a heartbeat. I think the outcry against him was the way that the league handled it. For a repeat offender, a guy who's kind of been in the highlight recently, and only hit him with a fine, that kind of goes against everything that they've kind of talked about.
Okay. How many games though would you have given him?
Not many. Maybe like
2.
Maybe like 2.
Okay.
Maybe.
All right.
I understand the it's a hockey play conversation. Put anyone else in that spot, and I don't think everyone's freaking out. I think because he specifically did it, it's a bigger deal.
It's
I
tough.
understood. Yeah, it is tough because it's you by keeping fighting in your league and by keeping guys like Tom Wilson from getting these, people said, ban them. Okay, that's kind of dumb because you have a league that's based off of physicality, and you have fighting that happens every game. So you're not going to ban a guy for getting in a scuffle.
Right.
And, heat in the moment, you push a guy's head into the ice. Is it good? No. But, stuff like that happens every game that goes completely uncalled for. 2 games later, Sidney Crosby pushes whoever into the ground at Philadelphia, and, nobody says a word. So, someone says star treatment, someone said, some people say star treatment, others say, I really don't see the difference, a repeat offender versus a non-repeat offender. I don't like Tom Wilson as much as the next guy, but everyone needs to relax. Like, He
Yeah,
didn't swing at him with his hockey stick.
I
But
agree.
consistency with the enforcement of these fines and punishments from the league offices needs to be tightened up, because that is not consistent with what they would have done. Let's say that's Sean Avery 2 years ago.
Oh,
If that's Sean Avery, that's a 10-game suspension easy.
yeah.
So how are you going to treat these guys who are kind of sticking out,
Hmm.
um, from the rest of the crop? Um, but I love Washington. I love John Carlson. I mean, the
Yeah.
way that he contributes
Yep.
offensively is awesome. And I'll give him an advantage because I don't think Zdeno Chara on that team is nothing. Is he up there in age, and is he, kind of past his point of being a key contributor? Yeah, but I think that's something that team's going to want to go into Boston and beat the crap out of his former team.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't think
100%.
that's a coincidence at all. That I think he's going to be on the ice starting. He should be starting one puck drops in round one.
I agree. I think he's a good third, fourth line guy to have for sure. Tyler, that leaves us with one more division before we talk a few other things here in the NHL, and that's
Mhm.
we've got Toronto winning the regular season divisional championship. Montreal clinched the last spot. They still have a chance to overtake Winnipeg, although Winnipeg has a game in hand. I I'm not real scared of Winnipeg and Montreal, except with the fact that Toronto always seems to find ways to lose in the opening round of the playoffs. But Edmonton, I am pleasantly surprised with them. You and I talked at the beginning of the year. We didn't know what was going to happen. McDavid's had a great year. They've represented themselves well, Tyler. They're in second place. They're going to host either Winnipeg or Montreal. We talk about this every year with Toronto. Is this going to be their year? Are they going to be able to get out of the first round? They're going to be able to play a conference final, whatever. As much as I hate to say this, and I know they're loaded with talent, top to bottom, they got to prove it to me that they can win when it counts.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're having the same conversation that we have every year.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of Minnesota, where it's like, hey, you make the playoffs, but what do you do when you get in there? And I think it's a little different because they're so loaded with talent,
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of juggling that can happen. But let's take the how it is as on its face value, or let's say Toronto versus Montreal. I think that Toronto can handle the Canadians.
I do too.
I don't really look at that. But that being said, I kind of looked at their roster. What was it last year when they played the Penguins in the play-in round, and I said I don't think they have a chance, and they went to work. But I see a lot of guys on that team who don't really scare me from an offensive production standpoint. The only guys who really come in are guys like Jonathan Drouin is a really great hockey player, who's not there anymore. And then you've got guys like Tyler Toffoli, Thomas Tatar, Corey Perry. All those guys are pretty decent. I'll take the Maple Leafs. For me, the biggest question is, can the Oilers do it with guys not named Connor McDavid and guys not named Leon Draisaitl? And that's what year.
I was just going to say. We ask that question all the time. They could put the points up. Now let's see if they can do it in the playoffs.
Yeah. And I respect Connor McDavid. I respect Leon Draisaitl, and I think that now is the time where they need to say, we are bigger than just those two guys. Connor McDavid's having arguably the greatest single season, whether it's shortened or not, doesn't matter in my opinion. 102 points in 54 games played. It's the highest points per game season, quote unquote, in NHL history.
Yeah. They've
just been absolutely phenomenal. And those two guys are absolutely killing it. I like them. I do also, I think Toronto's they're just so loaded. I don't know how you can look at their roster. Austin Matthews is having a career year. Mitch Marner's back to playing his best hockey. Tavares and William Nylander, those guys are clicking on all cylinders. I really, really, really like their roster, and I actually am going to pick them to come out of that division. I don't know how you can even look at any other team with the roster. That Canadian division, Lou, with all due respect, that Canadian division is an absolute disaster.
It's weak. It's very weak.
It's
I 100%
horrible.
agree. Yeah.
Horrible. And that doesn't it doesn't help my confidence level for those teams, but what are you going to do,
Tyler, you're right. My next question, I'm going to go with Toronto for sure, because I just think this is going to be, I think they finally are going to do it. I don't know. I have no confidence in Montreal. They, in my opinion, backed in with an overtime loss.
Yeah.
And Winnipeg, I love Connor Hellebuck, but they don't have the weapons, I don't think.
Nope.
And your point with Edmonton is spot on. They got two players that are so. My thing with that division, they lead the way to me with the most disappointing team. I thought the goaltending that they acquired this year is Calgary. I thought for sure they'd be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I wasn't too high on them.
Okay.
And I feel bad because I don't remember why, but I remember, when we chatted at the beginning of the season, kind of feeling a little uneasy about Calgary as a team. But, I think that whole division is kind of a coin toss at this point, and I think that really is disappointing that these Canadian teams have to watch such bad hockey night in and night out. And I think that's kind of why Toronto's numbers are a little inflated. I think that the biggest issue is whoever comes out of that division and goes back and plays the American team, I think they're going to have a hard time. If it's not Toronto, I think Toronto can hang with pretty much anybody in this league this year. I think that whoever comes out of that division is going to have a tough time.
100% agree. I wouldn't mind seeing Toronto win a cup because just for their fans, they've waited for so long, but I don't see it happening. They can make it out of there, but that's where it stops.
Yeah,
maybe I should rethink this. And, as much as I love the Detroit Red Wings, and I do, Columbus tying the Red Wings for last in that division to me is unacceptable. And that cost Tortorella his job, but wow, I didn't see that coming. I know Detroit's improved a little bit, but still, to see Columbus technically be in last place with the tiebreaker, wow, I didn't see that coming.
Neither did I. I actually kind of like their team heading into the season. I like the way that they're coached. I liked some of the pieces that they had heading into the year. So I was kind of in the same boat. But hey, if anyone's, I love Jeff Blashill from a guy that they like to build around. But if I'm Detroit, you have two tremendous head coaches that are sitting at home right now without jobs. I am not even thinking about it. I am calling Rick Tocchet and I'm calling John Tortorella and saying, what is it going to take to get you in Detroit? Because those are two guys that will turn your program into a winning culture. The Coyotes, I understand you got to move on. You kind of, you've improved. You've improved since Rick Tocchet has been there.
I don't get it.
And I really like him as a head coach. I don't understand it either. I understand Columbus, John Tortorella, I believe it's the last year of his deal.
Yeah.
And so they're not bringing him back, which is, that's a different conversation. They're a team that's ready to rebuild. You don't really rebuild with a guy like John Tortorella. But if I'm Detroit, I am on the phone the second I hear John Tortorella is out of a job, and I'm calling him. I'm saying, what does it take to get you here to Detroit? Because he is a guy who wins. And, this year's not a great year for him and his hockey club, but he's a winner.
Do you see Tortorella going to Seattle expansion team, or could we see somebody like Gerard Gallant going up there like he did in Vegas?
I thought about that. I think when you have an expansion team in a new city, I think that a lot of what you do is about building a fan base and winning over a new culture. John Tortorella is not going to do that.
No, I don't think so.
Because I don't think he's a very likable guy. No. He's not a guy who is. People are not like, oh, John Tortorella, humanitarian of the year. He's an amazing hockey coach, and his theories, his methods ruffle some feathers.
He's pretty much black and white, kind of, no nonsense. And I think, that's a good point with Detroit. I never thought about that. And I think that might go up, but you're right with Seattle. I don't think that would be a good fit.
Yeah. I think when I see Seattle, Rick Tocchet to me is a very good option for them. Ron Francis is in that organization.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys have a long history, not playing on the same team, but they have a long history of, kind of being in the same circles with each other. Rick Tockett's a guy who will win over the fan base. He will win over the locker room. He's a player's coach.
Okay.
Not a typical player's coach where he's going to be your best buddy, but the guys in that locker room are going to respect him. They're going to like him. And so I think that that's a very good move. If I'm Seattle, I take a long look at Rick Tocchet, a guy who doesn't really have a lot of experience, but he's won a couple of Stanley Cups as a coach. I don't think that is something to overlook. But I've always said this about John Tortorella. If I were a professional hockey player, he's the guy who I'd want to play for, because he's always going to look out for your best interests and the best interests of the team, and he's going to coach you hard. And I think that that's a guy who, as long as he's still able to fit within the mold of the current league style, which he has shown that he is, he'll get a job in a heartbeat.
What about, we know Blashill's in limbo. They haven't made any decision one way or the other. I don't know if Steve Yzerman's got any timetable, but you got Dan Bylsma was the bench coach. And that's my pick. If Blashill, if they decide to part ways or not bring him back, I got to think that he's thinking of Bylsma. I know Gerard Gallant's the sexy pick. I just, but I'm not totally going away from Bylsma getting bumped up to, the head coaching job at Detroit.
Yeah, Bylsma won a Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh.
Exactly.
Has shown that he's been able to win. I think that the issue that I think that he had in Pittsburgh was he had a hard time kind of adjusting as his roster adjusted. I think that he knew a system that worked. So my concern with him is Detroit's a team that the roster's turning over constantly.
Right.
How can you adjust with your team? I think that when Pittsburgh won their cups and they started to turn over the roster, you saw his system kind of break down a little bit. And so that's my biggest concern with Dan Bylsma. I would love that for Detroit fans. I would love that for him. He deserves to be a head coach in this league somewhere. I just think you need a coach that's going to come in and that's going to structurally take over this team. And that might be the hockey fan in me that says bring in John Tortorella, but I think if you bring in a guy like him, a team that is a guy who's going to come in here and has, Dylan Larkin, you have to play better.
Yeah.
And I understand that the team's not very good, but you have to play better. He will make Dylan Larkin play better, and he's going to make everyone else kind of float up around him. So I think that he's the perfect fit for Detroit.
Couple of questions before I let you go. This has been great, Tyler. Really enjoying this. What did you think of the Anthony Mantha trade to the Capitals from both points of view, Detroit and Washington?
I think it was a great trade for both sides, and I don't think that happens often.
No.
From Washington's perspective, you get a good player that you need, some depth on the forward line. You knew that Anthony Mantha in Detroit was only a matter of time.
Yes, 100%.
A guy who was underachieving massively on a failing roster. That's a gold ticket for a lot of these teams out there who need a big body. I wish him the best of luck, Anthony Mantha. But Detroit, Jacob Vrana has come in.
Oh,
he's
my
been
Lord.
A star.
Yeah.
And he hit the ground running. And I think Detroit fans are really going to like what they see from him in the future. But Anthony Mantha, wildly underachieved in Detroit. And, maybe a change of scenery is good for him in a place where he's not relying on to be one of the top four guys.
I agree.
In Washington. But I think, good for Detroit for getting amazing value with the first round pick. Late first round pick is what it's going to end up being because Washington's in the playoffs every year.
Right.
But hey, a first round pick's a first round pick and you're rebuilding your roster.
Yeah.
So
I like the pick. I think that he underachieved. And that's a great point. He doesn't have to be the star. He doesn't have to be the number one scorer. And I think that kind of pressure kind of got to him a little bit. And then when they weren't producing, then he kind of went into a shell a little bit. And then I don't know if he pouted or whatever, but whatever he did, it got him out of Detroit. And I'm with you on a fresh start. All right, time to put you up against the wall and figure out who you're going to pick to go to play for Lord Stanley's Cup. So I'm gonna we'll talk again before the final to go over this once we get maybe into the Stanley Cup final round. But I'll go first just to give you my pick.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is Vegas's turn. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is going to be a Vegas-Washington Stanley Cup final. I know it's chalk, but I just like how both teams are playing, and that's my pick.
Yeah, I was going to agree with you. For the sake of variety, I'll take Colorado.
Okay.
And I just think they're a team that's been on the brink of being right in there the last couple of years. They kind of remind me of Tampa.
Okay.
The last 4 or 5 years, how they've been right on the edge. They're kind of hitting their peak. It's time for them to beat Vegas and go on to the Stanley Cup Finals. They're a team that I've picked, I think, 2 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So it's time for them to make me look smart. And then a team, I think it's just a team out of the East. I'll go Colorado, and I'll go Pittsburgh. I'll go Pittsburgh. I think that Pittsburgh could make a good run just for the sake of being different. Because for the record, I would have taken Washington, Vegas as well. But for the sake of variety, I'll take Pittsburgh and in Colorado.
Well, every other year that I have you on, or every other time I let you go first, I put you on the spot, so I thought I'd make it a little bit easier for you. So, hey, before I let you go, we'll talk a little ACHA real quick. Hope won again in D3.
Mm-hmm.
Your Chippewas look pretty good. They're young, but I think they're going to be there. I think they're going to be back next year. It was great to see them playing hockey. And it just Adrian College won in D1,
Mm-hmm.
and what a machine they are! Holy cow!
Yeah.
They just keep rolling. But it was fun seeing. Got to run into Tyler Cataline. He was helping out, and he said to say hi. And he's going to be assisting at Michigan State next year with Don
Nice.
Headley. But it was fun seeing ACHA hockey again back playing, and the quality of hockey was good.
Yeah, I'm glad for those guys. I was talking a lot with Brendan Martin over the last year,
Mm-hmm.
As he's kind of looking for his post-hockey career, and he every time I asked him, I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" He's like, "We just want to play.
Yeah.
We just want to play. All they want to do is play. They didn't care when, they didn't care how. They just wanted to play." So I was glad for them they were able to play. I mean, what can't Chris Van Timmeren do?
Well,
He has created a machine over there at Hope, and I'm very, very happy for him that he's created so much success.
It was a totally different style this year. I mean, they relied more on their defensive play and the goaltending, but it was funny is I think their first 2 games they had 25 power plays.
That'll help.
Yeah,
That'll help.
Yeah, they had a little they got under the skin of Florida Gulf Coast, let's just say that. But it was you're right about Chris Van Timmeren. He's built a very, very solid program there, and they're going to be back again next year, just like Central will be back, and Arkansas, and they look good. But it's Michigan still rules in D3 and the ACHA, and I don't see that ending anytime soon. Tyler, hey, you don't know how much fun I had tonight talking hockey with you. I really appreciate you coming on. This has always been insightful. Looking forward to talking to you again. Keep up the great work you're doing down in Houston. And again, thanks for taking time out tonight. This has been an absolute treat.
No problem, Lou. Always a great time talking to you. Enjoy the playoffs.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you around Stanley Cup final time.
All right, sounds good.
All right, thanks. Tyler Marcotte, our NHL insider, joining us here on the network and on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. As again, the playoffs start this weekend. Boston and Washington kick things off on Saturday. We've got other divisions, as we mentioned, are still finishing up the North Division, the Canadian Division. It's they've got Vancouver, I think, has got 6 games left. Now, I know there was talk where they might start the same day with their playoffs, but it's still there's nothing better than the Stanley Cup playoffs. And we're going to have some great opening round matchups we talked about, especially in the East. Tyler's absolutely right. Pittsburgh and the Islanders, Washington and Boston. If you're a betting man, and I know we've got some, betting shows on our network with Philly Pete and the Vegas Squares, I'm not touching that division with a 10-foot pole. I'm going to put a couple shackles down on some things in the NHL, but I'm leaving that division alone because That is a coin flip waiting to happen, both those series. And I like Washington, I like Pittsburgh, but I think they're both going to go 6 or 7 unless something crazy happens. And again, he likes Carolina, and I like Tampa in the Central Division. Florida, they got to prove it to me. Nashville, it's a great story. But we talked about it before Tyler came on. You just never know in the Stanley Cup playoffs. There's always one upset. There's always one underdog team that makes a run. Is it going to be St. Louis this year? The Islanders, I wouldn't call that an upset. Maybe it's somebody in the Canadian division. Maybe it's Winnipeg. They've got the goaltending. Connor Hellebuck is a Vezina Trophy candidate every year. He could put them on their shoulders, and he could beat that Toronto team if they play in the first or the second round. But I don't know. So much intrigue in the Stanley Cup Finals. That's what it's all about. They start within a week, and then it's just going to get better and better as the Stanley Cup tournament comes. And again, we want to thank Tyler Marcotte for taking time out. Always great insight on the NHL playoff scene. So still to come, we've got Todd Corder coming up at approximately 9:40. He'll wrap up the show with us tonight. We'll talk the NFL draft. Atlanta, that's where he's from. We'll talk about the Falcons, how they upgraded with Kyle Pitts. We'll talk the draft. We'll talk MLB with him. When we come back, we'll talk NBA play-in scenarios and LeBron, how, he wants him fired, whoever made that decision. But, boy, he's got some selective amnesia. So we'll stick around and talk about that. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Platform and Networks and Zingo TV, Channel 761.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money. And we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Platform and Networks and Zingo TV, Channel 761. And again, what we wanted to take a minute to congratulate Daniel Walcott. He was the person that was the first ACHA player to go to the show, and he was on that all African-American line with Tampa Bay last night. as they took on the Florida Panthers. Congratulations to him. Great thing that the NHL did with the Tampa Bay Lightning did. And Daniel Walcott played for Lindenwood, their D1 team in the ACHA, played with the Syracuse Crunch, and is now on the Tampa Bay Lightning. And it's great to see him get some ice time last night. And the ACHA, the dream's still there. I know it's a long shot for those folks in the ACHA to make it to the NHL level, but the dream is still alive, as he said. And congratulations to Daniel Walcott for making it to the dance via the ACHA, so the American Collegiate Hockey Association. Thanks again to Tyler Marcotte for joining us here tonight on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. You're watching us live here on the 12-Ounce Sports platform and networks, which includes Zingo TV, Channel 761, Facebook Live, Twitter, and our YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can watch a replay of the show, including the interview with Tyler Marcotte, on my website, which is captainlou.net. The show will be downloaded tomorrow, so we invite you to check out that website as well. And Tyler and all of our guests here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza are brought to you on the Ken Ryan Voya Financial Advisors guest line. You can call him at 517-420-5669. That is the Ken Ryan Voya Financial Advisors hotline, our guest line. Again, that's 517-420-5669. Well, we want to talk a little bit about the NBA, as next week we're going to have as one of our guests our NBA insider, Steve Finnemore. We're going to try to effort to get him in, talk some basketball. You talk about a wealth of knowledge in the world of sports. When it comes to basketball, there's nobody I would rather have on than Steve Finnemore, ex-high school coach, college coach here in the Michigan area. He's got a wealth of knowledge, historical, he's statistical. He looks at the game from every angle. We're going to talk NBA playoffs with him. The play-in scenario is coming up. And right now, it would be the Lakers and Golden State in the 7 and 8 game, and I believe Memphis and San Antonio in the 9-10 matchup. I know Memphis has got the 9th seeds locked up. It's either Golden State or New Orleans for that final playoff spot, the play-in scenario. And in the East, it's Boston. Oh, gosh, I can't remember who the 8th seed is. Charlotte's in it. I know Washington, I think, is right around that 9-10. How it works is the 7 and 8 seeds play one game. The 7th seed wins, they're the 7th seed. The loser of that game is the 8th seed. So LA could technically lose that game and then have to play another game. Could be the 9th seed or the 10th seed. It could be Memphis or it could be San Antonio. And Boston again playing the 8th seed. Why is that? It's slipping me right now. But I look at it, the two surprises in my opinion. Oh, Miami. That's right. Miami's the 8th seed. You're looking at the Eastern Conference finalists from last year now in the play-in scenario. Boston and Miami. Boston loses that game, then they'd have to play another one just to get in as the 8th seed. The Lakers. Now, it's funny, as LeBron James signed off on this at the beginning of the year, and it was one of the deals that they needed to have basically to keep the CBA going. And so there would be no lockout or no strike or whatever. But now that he and his Lakers are in a playoff situation or a play-in situation where they're right now the 7th seed, he comes out last week and says that, wow, whoever came up with this, should be fired. How ironic is that? Now, again, LeBron, first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. Won 4 championships, on his way to possibly getting another one, maybe in a couple of years, I don't know. They're not going to do it this year. Even if he plays and he's healthy, I just don't see it. They don't have the chemistry. They don't have a Rondo. But I love, can you see this? Steph Curry, LeBron James in a 1-game scenario for the 7th seed. And then you could see Greg Popovich, if the Lakers lose that game, Greg Popovich against LeBron for the right to go to the playoffs in a 1-game scenario. I know talent is there. I know they're loaded with it, and I know they've been plagued by injuries. Anthony Davis, who, he's gotten them a title with LeBron, but he's never been the go-to guy, or has had success with it, I should say. He's played in spurts, but he's been injured. I get it. And I know LA's not had they didn't have the rest that a lot of the other teams did because they played so quick after winning the championship. But, it's getting old. LeBron, I love his game. I love what he's done for the city of Akron. I get it. Never been in trouble with the law. I understand that. But, I think he sometimes acts like he's bigger than the game. And I just don't like it. Then he comes out with this stuff about the play-in tournament. Okay. You were okay with it back in October or back last year when it didn't affect you. You wanted to give more teams a chance. I didn't know how I was with this, the one-game scenario, but I like it. And it's not just because Boston or LA or Golden State or whatever, they have a chance to get knocked out. I like the scenario. It adds some spice to the opening round. The NBA season is long as it is, and to me, it's not very relevant. In a normal season, if they had the 1-8 scenario, I would say LA would be, you could count LA, you could count Boston, but right now, really, there's some intrigue in these playoffs, and I can't wait to pick Steve's brain next week about it because there are so many different options out there. You got in the East, let's look at that. You've got a New Jersey Net team, Brooklyn, that, they've loaded up. They got LaMarcus Aldridge. They got Blake Griffin to go along with the big three. They haven't gelled. They haven't played together. Harden may come back at the end of the week. Do you really have confidence in the Brooklyn Nets going to the finals? I don't. And the Philadelphia 76ers, the Milwaukee Bucks, I would take one of those two teams over the Nets right now because they'll play better defense. You get into the playoffs, defense will trump you. I'm telling you, it's been proven. And, Philadelphia, is this finally their year? Joel Embiid, if he can get over himself, can Ben Simmons stay healthy? Can they play together? But hey, don't count Milwaukee out. They've got big memories of last year when they thought they should have beat Miami, and I think they should have. And speaking of Miami, where's Jimmy Butler now? He was Mr. Everything. He was the golden child. Everybody forgot what he did to Chicago and what he did to Minnesota and Philadelphia for that matter. Miami's on the verge of not making the playoffs. And Boston, wow. Boy, their fortunes have not exactly been the greatest. So right now you're looking at Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and in the East, then you've got New Jersey. New Jersey. I'm going to call them that forever. Brooklyn. I'm still leaning towards Milwaukee. I really am. And I just don't trust the Nets. I don't think they know how to play defense. So that's going to be an interesting side of that scenario. Then you've got, on the other side of the bracket, you have obviously the Clippers. You've got Utah. You've got Phoenix. You've got Denver. Some very, very good teams. Dallas is playing better. Portland. You got the Lakers as the 7th seed. Let's say the Lakers make the 7th seed. They're going to play Phoenix in the opening round. Now, at the beginning of the year, I thought it would have been the other way around. I would have thought Phoenix would have been the 7th seed and LA would have been the 2nd seed. I'm not as surprised about Utah being number 1. But you got the Clippers. They're going to be right there. Here's my thing with the Clippers. Can Paul George finally win a playoff round or two? That's going to be the the $1 million question. You talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs in the NHL not being able to get over the hump and win a couple of playoff series. What about the Clippers? They got beat by Denver last year. should have won that series. Do they got what it takes to beat, I don't know, in the opening round? They'll probably be the 3rd seed, so they'll probably play Portland or LA. We could see Portland or Dallas. We could see a Clipper-Laker opening round matchup should the Lakers get back up to the 6th seed. That, to me, would be crazy. Opening round. That was what everybody thought would be the Western Conference Final, would be LA and LA. I don't know. Some intrigue there, but getting back to LeBron and his griping about the play-in tournament, just be quiet, please. You signed off on it. You were okay with it until your team is in it. So just buck up, whatever. If you'd have won a few more games, you wouldn't have to worry about it. You'll have your chance. I still think they'll probably somehow end up in the 6th seed, but it would be comical to see them and Steph Curry in a 1-game playoff for that 7th seed. But once the Lakers get in, though, and they do get healthy or they get their players back, watch out. They'll be tough. And home court isn't what it used to be right now because some teams are not going to have the fans that some other ones are. And that's going to be the interesting thing with the NBA playoffs. We'll talk more about that next week as well. Is what are we looking at for how much of a home court advantage, and is it going to be fair? You got teams like Miami, if they make it, they're going to fill it. Dallas, they'll be able to fill their arena. Some of the states and whatnot that have the guidelines not as strict as some of the other ones, that we face here in this country. That's going to be very, very interesting to see as far as that goes. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-ounce Sports Platform and Networks and Zingo TV, channel 761. Still to come in about 7 minutes, we're going to have Todd Corder joining us, talking a little NFL draft, especially the Atlanta Falcons. We'll talk about our Lions and, some of the surprises or whatnot. And also we'll talk a little MLB baseball. What's gone on with the hitting with Major League Baseball? The dead ball era is upon us. And, I look at the Tigers. Oh, my God, are they horrible right now? Behind, they're getting good pitching, but a lot of teams are. But the hitting right now, league-wide, I don't mind a 3-2 game or a 2-1 game, but it seems to be the norm. I mean, Detroit's team batting average is what? 210? 215? That's terrible. They're talking about moving the mound back a foot. Really? Wow. That's crazy. Some of the other things we talked about earlier in the show, do you think that Aaron Rodgers is going to get traded? The odds are, I think it's 65-35, he'll be in Denver. Yes, you can bet on that in certain places in Las Vegas. And what cracks me up about it is the odds for Denver to win the Super Bowl are, they're getting better and better, and he's not even there yet. There's no way I'd put money on them right now. No way. That, I just don't see it. And even if he does show up and gets traded to Denver, do they still have enough weapons to make it to the playoffs or to the Super Bowl? You've got a team from Kansas City led by some quarterback named Patrick Mahomes. You've got an up-and-coming quarterback, Justin Herbert, who proved himself to be very good, I mean. And, you've got Oakland or Las Vegas. So, yeah, it's out there. It's crazy. Well, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, Todd Corder will join us. We'll talk some NFL with him, Major League Baseball, and whatever else is on his mind. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-ounce Sports, platform, and networks. 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 12-ounce Sports,
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money. And we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Captain Lou Extravaganza Live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Platform and Networks and Zingo TV, channel 761. Of course, you can watch us on YouTube, our YouTube channel, Twitter Live, and Facebook Live here on 12-Ounce Sports. Again, want to thank Tyler Marcotte for joining us earlier in the show. Great insight on the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, which are coming up starting this weekend. The regular season wrapping up in the NHL, and of course, we talked a little coaching carousel. Should Detroit go after after Rick Tocchet or John Tortorella? He seems to think that Detroit should be on the phone with John Tortorella right now. And who knows what's going on? Jeff Blashill in limbo, or not really in limbo. They haven't publicly made a decision yet with the Red Wings and Jeff Blashill. I know he hasn't exactly been dealt the best of hands when it comes to the talent level of the Detroit or of the Red Wings. So anyways, let's go back to our guest line, and that is the Ken Ryan at Voya Financial Advisors Hotline. Give him a call at 517-420-5669. Now we're joined by Todd Korter. You can catch him on Graddick Sports and Flow Sports TV, and of course his podcast at the ATL Prime Sports. Todd, welcome back to the show, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's been a while. We haven't communicated in a while. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Boy, you know what? I can't complain. We got the Stanley Cup playoffs starting next week, so I know you're excited for that. Our Red Wings, unfortunately, aren't going to be there, but we'll still get to see some great hockey. And the NFL draft is over. Some good picks by our teams, and you know, it's a good time to be a sports fan again.
It always is. There's no doubt about it. The NHL playoffs, wow. I tell you what, whoever comes out of the Penguins, Capitals, Islanders, and oh gosh, I'm stuck on the fourth place team in there.
The Bruins.
The Bruins. So why would I get stuck on them? But you know, that whoever comes out of that division, they could win it, but they're going to be so battle tested and so worn out. I'm not sure if they'll win it. You know, Carolina's dangerous, Florida's dangerous. You know, I think there's really about 10 teams that can win the cup in the NHL.
I agree. You know, I like the story of Vegas and Colorado again. You know, they're right up there. They're so deep. You know, Toronto or Tampa Bay is so deep. And you know, Todd, Toronto, this might be the year they make it out of that division. But like we were talking in the first hour, that Canadian division hasn't exactly been the strongest division for NHL hockey this year.
No, it has not. And Montreal has clinched the last spot with 58 points. They wouldn't be in the playoffs in the East or the Central, and they'd be fighting for the last spot in the West. I mean, you know, when I look at the North and I look at the West, to me, it's Vegas, Colorado, Minnesota, and Toronto. The only thing is Vegas and Colorado and Minnesota are going to knock each other off.
Yeah.
Toronto should get to the Final Four, but I don't believe the Maple Leafs are as good as Vegas, Colorado, or Minnesota.
I agree.
And when you look at the other side of the bracket, the Central and the East, like I said, Pittsburgh, Washington, Boston, the Islanders, any one of those teams could get to the Final Four and win it. And then when I look at the Central, Carolina, Florida, and Tampa Bay, they are definitely the three favorites in the Central. They're all so botched up. So what is that, 3, 7, 10, 11 teams?
Yeah.
You know, 11 teams could win the Cup. I can't remember a season in the NHL where 11 teams could win the Cup. And of course, this has been the most unusual season. You'll have... we finally starting to have fans in the stands, and of course they can't in Canada have any fans at all. And the team that gets out of the North is actually going to play in front of fans for the first time on the road if they can get them out of Canada. Hopefully the border will be open by then, Lou. That could be a real problem for the NHL.
Yeah, I think hopefully they'll get some type of special dispensation to be able to do that. And the quarantining factor, it's still out there. It's going to be very interesting to follow that for sure. Todd, you know, let's talk about the NFL draft. You know, we all know that Trevor Lawrence was going to be picked at Jacksonville, and we all, for the most part, knew Zach Wilson was going to the Jets. Trey Lance, I like the pick with San Francisco. And then, of course, you had Kyle Pitts in your neck of the woods going to Atlanta. Todd, I love that pick from Atlanta. I think Pitts is going to be a monster for you guys down there.
Oh, I think he's going to be one heck of a player.
Yes.
You know, I wish the Falcons would have traded down and got some additional picks. They tried to do it with Detroit, ironically, and they couldn't come to an agreement. My next question is for the Atlanta Falcons. What are they going to do with Julio Jones? I have an inkling there's a 50-50 shot they may trade him. His contract is an albatross because he's not playing in enough games. He's not healthy. When he plays, he's great, but he's missing a lot of games the last couple of years. I'm just wondering if they're going to trade him. Once again, I think it's 50-50. And what are they going to get for him? Some team's going to come up and get him. You know, I believe the Patriots is a great spot for Julio Jones. They could definitely use him in New England now that they got Matt Jones at quarterback from Alabama, where Julio went to Alabama.
Yeah, I definitely could see him going. I think, what is it, after June 1st, the salary cap hit is basically cut in half. And I think you could see some movement. Obviously, you know, the Aaron Rodgers saga in Green Bay, that's probably, if he gets moved, which right now it looks like he will, I think that's when he'll get moved. But before we get to that, I was a little surprised with Cincinnati not going after Penei Sewell. I thought he'd have been a great addition. I know that he wanted to get Jamar Chase, that he being Joe Burrow, but I'd love the pick of Sewell at 7 by the Lions. I think he'll help anchor an offensive line that is really starting to come together.
Lou, I tell you what, the Sewell pick may be the best first-round pick the Lions have had. I'm going to go on a limb and say since Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
Calvin Johnson, in that era.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they a couple NFL guys, a couple NFL experts said this is the one sure Hall of Famer out of his draft class, which really shocked me. But then again, it really didn't.
No, I like the pick. I think Detroit needed that. You know, as they say, you got to build from the inside out. And yeah, the sexy pick would have been to go after Devontae Smith, who would have been available, or even a quarterback. You know, it wouldn't have shocked me what Detroit being Detroit. They would have did an Andre Ware and went after a quarterback. But I love the pick. But I got to tell you, Todd, the one pick that scares me that was made was the trade up, and I got to give the Bears a lot of credit trading up to get Justin Fields. I think that was a home run. That might have bought Coach Nagy a couple more years in Chicago.
It may have, but you know he's going to learn some really good quarterbacks there for the Bears.
Yeah,
he doesn't have to sit and play right away in Chicago. I mean, and this is really a good situation. I'm not sure if he'll start right away for the Bears. You look at this quarterback situation in Chicago. You know, they've got two veterans that have had a good career in Andy Dalton and Nick Foles. You know, Justin Fields right now is second on the depth chart, which really surprised me. I thought they would put him in third. I mean, Nick Foles has won a Super Bowl, and Andy Dalton had a productive career in Cincinnati with plenty of playoff appearances, and Andy did good last year for Dallas. So, you know, I think this is a great place for Justin Fields to go. Yeah. The Bears got talent with Allen Robinson, the second wide receiver. They got a nice tight end, Cole Kmet. I mean, this is a team that you know, with David Montgomery at tailback, this is a team that could take that next step depending upon what Aaron Rodgers is going to do in the NFL North.
Yeah, that's the saga right now. You know, it's funny. I'm not surprised with what went on. I mean, he wasn't happy last year. You know, and you know, they made it to the championship game. They're a good team, Todd. The Packers are. And, you know, for the life of me, I just don't understand why they would not all these years draft him some help on the offensive side of the ball. And, you know, I know that he's got Devontae Adams, he's one of the top receivers in the league. But I just think at the end of the day, Todd, I think he's going to be gone because I just think the relationship is broken, and I just think he's had enough with Green Bay, and I honestly think deep down they've had enough with him.
Well, here it's come down to two teams. You know, it's all about cap space. You got Denver and Vegas. The NFL schedule is coming out on tomorrow.
Yeah.
The NFL removed the portion commercial there between Mahomes and Rodgers in case Rodgers doesn't come back. You know, to me, it's two things. He wants a contract extension. I really believe he does, so he has more security. He doesn't want to be in a situation where the Packers can, you know, decide when to move on from him. Example, next season. Yeah. And from the Packers' perspective, they built a Super Bowl team around him, and the team has done what is best for them. And either way, I just think they got to come to an extension with him, because if they do not, this is a Super Bowl ready team without Aaron Rodgers, unless they get back some crazy deal like out of Seattle for Russell Wilson. This team's not going to win a Super Bowl. If they got Aaron Rodgers, they got a good damn chance at it. So, you know, to me, I think Green Bay is in a tough situation. They're either going to extend him or they're going to move on from him. And Denver's got, you know, they got some playmakers out in there, and they have a really good defense. We may get Rodgers versus Mahomes twice.
Yeah.
If he gets traded out there or to Vegas. Wouldn't it be wild if, if they just swap quarterbacks, Green Bay and Oakland? I I mean, not Oakland, but Las Vegas now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, when I looked at the Packers and their draft, this is a team that's loaded. They got Aaron Jones at running back, A.J. Dillon backing them up, Devontae Adams and Lazard at the wide receivers, along with Valdez-Scantling. I don't. You got Tunyon at tight end. What hurt Green Bay last year was the injury on the offensive line before the playoffs. Because the Tampa Bay's D-line, I don't blame the Packers what they've done drafted defensively. I think they needed to get better there, and I think they made the right choice.
Well, they got a good defensive back, I think, out of Georgia for sure. And I just, from his point of view, which is kind of skewed, and I just think his act has grown old in Green Bay. I just don't think he wants to be there anymore. And I think he wants to be out west. So I don't know. Your point's well taken about the extension, though. Maybe this is just a ploy on his part to get that $45 million contract or whatever, just so he can have the upper hand. And I think that's what a lot of it is with him.
Well, it sure is, and the money will all of a sudden put a smile on you real quick.
Oh, it sure will.
It's not enough. But the thing is, to me, is that I'll say it again. Packers want to win a Super Bowl. They got to find a way to keep Rodgers happy. And it all goes back to me with his press conference at the end of the year last year when they lost to Tampa Bay after the NFC Championship game. He looked like he had the life sucked out of him, and all of a sudden he went from being happy every week of the year to I'm pissed, I want out.
Oh, I 100% agree. And it's funny, you looked at draft night, you saw teams like Detroit and the Jets and Indianapolis and whatnot, Chicago jumping up and down, high fives and everything. And the Green Bay war room looked like a morgue. And you could tell that whole thing, the life was sucked out of them for sure. And to your point about, a ready-made team, we don't know what Jordan Love, what he can do. He didn't have a preseason. And he didn't, he didn't play last year. There's such an unknown. That's kind of scary if you're a Green Bay fan because you're looking at that or, the possibility of Drew Lock maybe coming. But I don't know, Todd. It's going to be fun to watch.
Well, they're going to bring a couple of quarterbacks in for minicamp, and one of them's going to be Jim Kelly's nephew. So they're going to bring him in. And now, of course, Devontae Adams on a national radio show on Monday mentioned potential concerns for his long-term future with Green Bay. Sure, Aaron Rodgers leave because they built up a special relationship. To me, a domino effect could happen. Yeah. You got to keep that locker room, and I think you got to sign Aaron Rodgers, and you got to sit down and say, hey, man, we need you. We thought what was best with this club. We'll try to pick up another wide receiver through free agency and try to do that. But we felt that our defense needed more than the offensive side of the ball. And if you disagree with us, that's okay. But, we got to come together and get this thing done because I think they could go back to the Super Bowl if they have Rodgers.
Oh, I do too.
They get to the Super Bowl, excuse me.
Yep, they've got a legit shot with him there, no doubt. Hey, we got a few minutes left. I want to switch gears. I want to get the baseball out real quick. Throw them. You and I talked a little bit, via text message last week or a couple days ago or whatever it was about about baseball. And my goodness, it's just, I love the game. You're a traditionalist, I know, and I agree to a certain extent, but what's gone on with the hitting and base? The Tigers are horrible, but it's not just the Tigers. I mean, it's just, we're talking super dead ball era right now.
Oh, it's incredible to me, the amount of strikeouts in the game, walks and home runs. You're not getting the ball put in a play a tremendous amount. Detroit's got 5 guys in the lineup that are hitting under 200. They unfortunately gave Buck Farmer his unconditional release. Last week, the Conyers, Georgia native out of Georgia Tech, who had 3 good years for Detroit, real solid from 27 to 2019. and they dropped him because his ERA was over 12 plus. He kept giving up home run balls. It was about location for Buck. It's not about stuff at all, and he just wasn't locating the ball. He may come back and help somebody. Somebody's going to pick him up. He might get a minor league deal, and he may already have. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
Lou, I just can't believe, these guys with their two-strike approach at the plate, they're still swinging like they have no strikes on them. They don't protect the plate. They don't try to put the ball the other way. Even if there's a shift on, all you got to do is bump the ball on the grass down third baseline 5 or 6 times, and there goes the shift. So, and for the Tigers, if I may speak, I don't know if anybody said this up there, but it's time for Detroit to drop Miguel Cabrera, to let him go like the Angels did to Albert Pujols. It is time. I know they owe him a ton of money. He's not going to hit anymore. He's not even hitting 150. It's time to let him go and get this team to get young. It's already young enough. It has some promising young starting pitching, but this lineup is all in Al Avila. There's one hitter, and that's it. That's worth the salt. The rest of them are struggling. Well, Harold Castro's coming back.
Yeah.
But the rest of them are struggling to not only hit the ball, but get on base.
Well, I think what they're trying to do to hang on for Miggy is to see if he can get to 500 home runs and 3,000 hits in a Tiger uniform. But I'll tell you, at this rate, it ain't going to happen this year. He's a shell of himself. I feel, I kind of feel bad for him. But, it's funny. You talk about the shift. I got to bring this up. We're up against it. But one of our buddies that we broadcasted with, Boz Echevarri, he is in favor of banning the shift. He's the only one that I know. I had him on my show about a month ago, and he said, "Hey, I'm all for it." I had to chuckle. I said, why don't they teach these guys how to hit the opposite way anymore in the minors? That's what I want to know, Todd.
Right. I agree. And you know what? I was for banning the shift, but I'm not. But I'm for the DHL in the National League.
Yeah.
I'm not for putting the runner on second base. I'm not for pitcher having to face 3 batters. I'm not for any of that. But I don't mind the shift because somebody's going to figure it out one day and bump the ball about 7 times, and that's going to be it.
I agree. I'm with you on everything you said. I don't have as big of an issue with the 3-batter minimum. I don't like the guy on second base rule in the 10th inning. I could see him doing it maybe in the 12th, but the 10th inning's too soon. I mean, right away, I don't know. I just, that's it. But Todd, I got to let you go. This always goes quick. Tell us again your podcast and what you got going on.
ATL Prime Sports, Friday, live at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, blogtalkradio.com, 1-347-205-9631 until 1:30. We have not attained a guest yet. We may or may not have one. But as usual, we'll be tackling some of these topics and much more.
All right. Thanks, Todd. I got to let you go. Thanks for joining us as always. Have a great night.
Thank you.
All right. That's going to do it tonight. Some great conversation as well. Thanks to Todd Korter for joining us, talking NFL draft and NHL, MLB. Thanks again to Tyler Marcotte, giving us a great insight as well on the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. And thank you for joining us here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. We'll be back next Tuesday, 8 until 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Lots of basketball, lots of hockey talk. Don't go anywhere. Hey, this reminder, keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, and as always, keep your minds open. Until then, this is Captain Lou saying so long here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza on the 12 Ounce Sports Network.